So welcome back to We Talk Boxing. So before I begin, I'd like to give a big congratulations which goes out to Alexander Usyk for retaining and winning the much anticipated rematch against AJ. So my initial thoughts about this fight was that it was a much improved display from AJ, and that he looked, far more, composed, fit, athletic, and he even had some good body movement and footwork at times, especially during the earlier rounds as well. And he made, from the get go, his jab, it was a lot more evident, he was, he was out there compared to the first fight and stuff, But it caused, obviously, especially during the early rounds, it caused Usyk, some troubles really, and obviously he had to kind of reset himself, and he stuck to his game plan, Usyk and stuff, but it gave him a little bit of trouble, and that's because AJ, he was far more focused, for coming out, and wanting to prove something to Usyk. But yeah, it was a better display from AJ. However, Usyk's boxing skills, as I said, it was class throughout the fight, especially in the earlier rounds as well. By just doing enough at times, for winning those, the rounds, I'd probably say. Do you know what I mean? I'd probably say he would like come out, throw a couple of jabs, slip a few shots and stuff, and put towards the end, of the earlier rounds, he would then, put like a 30-second onslaught, But to the judges, that looks like, he's the more dominant fighter, especially during the earlier rounds, and he banked quite a lot of the earlier rounds, in my opinion, which, up until I'd probably say like 8, 9, and 10 and stuff like that. Most people was thinking, "Oh, AJ needs a knockout here," and it just wasn't to be really. Now, although it was a better start and performance by AJ, do you know what I mean? I feel that it was slightly frustrating at times because when he managed to break the distance of Usyk, by landing a few jabs and getting within range and stuff like that. He would at times, AJ, he would like hesitate to throw the big right hand or more punishing shots, which potentially could have caused, Usyk a lot of problems really. And it was that hesitation which just allowed Usyk to kind of reset, and set his feet and land his own shots on AJ, and sometimes it wasn't just the ones or twos, it was threes or fours. He was landing on AJ without reply. And it's quite interesting, really, because I think going forward, I feel that Team AJ kind of need to work on his foot movement. Do you know what I mean? And I feel as if if this happens and stuff like that, then potentially, like it may improve him because at times is in many fights, not just this one, there's plenty of other fights in the past as well that his footwork, AJ's, he's very flat footed and he really puts a lot of weight through that lead foot, and he's kind of like, all the power and stuff like that is kind of set. Do you know what I mean? Whereas when you come up against a good fighter such as like Usyk and potentially Fury and stuff like that, their movement, they're quite nimble on their feet. Do you know what I mean? They've got good movement and they're always bridging the gaps, and it's bridging these gaps which allows opponents like Usyk and potentially Fury, if they fought, to land plenty of shots. On AJ, which they don't always cause AJ harm, but it's that movement which I think AJ struggles with. And for me, I've seen improvements. In AJ's game, and I just feel as if if he continues to improve, this is just one of the aspects that Team AJ should probably look to do, look to try and work on his foot movement, try and get him a little bit more mobile on his feet. Sorry. Now, I'd also say that majority of AJ's success came within the early rounds. He was extremely calm and focused throughout the early rounds, which is quite good to see. And he wasn't put off his game, which is good as well. And he got caught with a couple of shots and stuff like that, but that's normal. Do you know what I mean? And it's quite interesting because even during these early rounds as well, even when AJ got caught with some shots and stuff like that, you know what I mean. at times, you know what I mean, the more he got caught, it kind of put him off his game plan. AJ, you know what I mean, because he had a nice tight guard, nice body movement, head movement, and stuff like that, and really utilising, you know what I mean, the ducking and diving and stuff like that. But when he got caught in the latter part of the rounds, like from probably say round seven onwards and stuff like that, his guard became like his guard came down. Do you know what I mean? Which allowed Usyk to land more. Do you know what I mean? And at times, AJ just kept swinging and missing quite wildly as well, which is quite interesting. But as I said, do you know what I mean? Usyk is just is slick. Do you know what I mean? His lateral body movement was brilliant because it's that lateral body movement which didn't really allow AJ time to set and to land his own punches, and his jab as well. Usyk's jab, you know what I mean? It was brilliant. You know what I mean? And what I liked mostly about Usyk was that his footwork, you know what I mean, to gauge in and out of his opponent, you know what I mean, to land his shots was brilliant to see. And another thing that was quite surprising about Usyk as well was his durability because I mean he showed a lot of grit and a lot of heart in this fight, and he got caught with some big shots by AJ, but he was still there up until the end, and he gave as good as he got really. You know what I mean? But like I said, his footwork, his feints, his leading left hand, do you know what I mean, was brilliant. Do you know what I mean? And at times when he was coming in, Usyk as well, he wasn't just coming in with a single jab, he was doubling it up. Do you know what I mean? Which again caused AJ a bit of problems because that double jab followed with the straight left. You know what I mean? It was a straight left that caught him really, and you know what I mean. It's quite interesting because like AJ's obviously he had a lot of the advantages, height and weight and stuff like that, but you know what I mean. Usyk allowed, you know what I mean, AJ to fight at his pace and his height. He brought AJ down to his height. Do you know what I mean? And you know what I mean, throwing a lot of shots as well when AJ was planting his feet or when AJ was moving backwards, which affected AJ quite a bit as well. And another thing that was good, you know what I mean, by Usyk was that he had the ability to step up the levels within the rings because at times I'd probably say up until the sixth round, it's probably, you know what I mean, his second gear really, second gear, borderline in third gear. But after he took that big onslaught, you know what I mean, I think it was in the ninth round, you know what I mean, he picked up the pace, Usyk, you know what I mean, he just took it to another level, took it to gear three, and you know what I mean, rounds 10, 11, and 12, he just, you know what I mean, he looked brilliant. You know what I mean, he outboxed AJ by a mile. Now, something else, you know what I mean, that I want to kind of talk about, you know what I mean, was the canvas, you know what I mean, in the ring, which was quite appalling to be fair, because on many occasions, both fighters, you know what I mean, in the main event were, you know what I mean, slipping, you know what I mean, when they were throwing punches because there's so much sweat on the canvas, do you know what I mean, and it happened as well, obviously, in other fights on the night as well, which is, you know what I mean, quite bad, but, you know what I mean, I just feel as if, you know what I mean, they probably should have, you know what I mean, thought about this before the event. Do you know what I mean? Thought something like this could potentially happen because of how humid and how hot it would have been as well. And something else that was quite interesting was the scorecard on one of the judges. You know what I mean? I think they gave it AJ 15-13, which I don't know how the English judge saw that. To be fair, because for me it was a unanimous decision, even though it was a better display from AJ. Now, as I mentioned, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. I feel as if you know what I mean. Like this fight showed improvements in AJ, and I feel that he's getting better. Do you know what I mean? As a fighter, although he lost to the better man on the night, and you know what I mean. I know you know what I mean. Team AJ, you know what I mean. I feel as if they need to kind of like capitalize on this because if he is to ever try and become three-time heavyweight champion again in the future, you know what I mean, and he's still got that passion to become one, then he needs to, you know what I mean, keep improving. And I feel as if one way he could do this is by working on, you know what I mean, his foot movement really. Just get a little bit lighter on his toes at times, you know what I mean, and maybe to allow him to come in and out on opponents and land his own shots and do you know what I mean? Try and avoid him from, you know what I mean, being a sitting target really, because that's what he was for a lot of the, you know what I mean, portion of the fight. You know what I mean? He was always planting his feet, and then Usyk, you know what I mean, would just come in and out, landing his shots, threes and fours, and you know what I mean. AJ just couldn't move; he just couldn't get out of the way. So you know what I mean. Like I said, I've seen improvements there. So hopefully, team, you know what I mean, AJ could potentially go away and work on stuff like this because there's still some big fights out there for him. And you know what I mean? Personally, I don't really want to see him like kind of retire and hang up his gloves. So I'd like him to get in there with some of the other bigger names in the heavyweight division. You know what I mean? What else is quite interesting is that I thought on the night, do you know what I mean? Usyk's tactics were brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel as if, you know what I mean, Usyk's team must have known at some point, you know what I mean, that AJ would have put on some sort of onslaught. Do you know what I mean? With many punches and catching Usyk and maybe hurting Usyk and stuff. And they must have knew that at some point you would kind of blow a gasket. Do you know what I mean? And this is when, do you know what I mean? Team Usyk must have probably said to themselves during like me training camp and stuff, if this happens, you know what I mean, apply plenty of pressure on AJ. Do you know what I mean? To try and, you know what I mean, like stop him really, because when he blows a gasket, he's a sitting target. You know what I mean, he can't move, he can't do anything. And I feel as if this was perfectly demonstrated, you know what I mean, in rounds 10 and 11 and 12. Do you know what I mean? Because that big onslaught from AJ in round 9, you know what I mean, just, he took everything out of him. Do you know what I mean? And he just, that was it, really. But anyway, you know what I mean? You guys let me know your thoughts about this fight. Do you know what I mean? Did you feel AJ should have potentially won on one of the scorecards, which was quite interesting to me, to be fair? And do you know what I mean? Do you agree with me that I mean AJ's display was a lot better, and that he is improving as a fighter, and there's still some bigger fights out there for him? Do you know what I mean? But anyway, as always, please like, subscribe, comment, and share for more boxing related content. Bless.